Don't give up. Get fired up. Hey, it's Sofia Wren. Today I want to talk to you about being fired up and what that means. Why is it so important? And why you shouldn't just turn off the news or turn off from the problems that you have in your life. Life is always going to have challenges, could be really big ones, and I have been there. I'll share my story. But I just really want to encourage you to make sure that you're not tuning out of your life or things going on in the world just because they're difficult to deal with, because the extremes of tuning out can be really detrimental to your life. And so you probably already know that it isn't a sustainable solution forever, even if you might take a rest or a break. I hope that you see getting fired up as your ultimate destination. This is going to help you be more resilient in navigating life's challenges. So I'm the kind of person who hangs out with business owners and writers and people who have a big sensitive heart or a lot of ideas for how they want to help other people. I'm certainly very sensitive, and I have found the world to be quite rough and tumble from a very young age. When I was 3, my mom died of a disease that now has a vaccine. It was just a thing of the times in the late 80s. And unfortunately, I never got to know her. I never got to have mom, and I had somebody in my life who was a very negative replacement for her. And I've had many challenges. And a few years ago, my dad passed away, so that was like the end of having supportive birth parents. Yay! I was 34. Really didn't see it coming and felt like an idiot because, of course, stuff like that happens. It had already happened to me. So I totally understand if you feel depressed or bad about bad things happening, because you have actual evidence that bad things have a habit of happening. So I have never found toxic positivity, at least not recently, has not been able to dig its little hooks into my brain, because I have these very real things that I can point to, like, hey, this bad thing happened and this bad thing happened. But somebody once said to me, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And so basically the idea of that was, do you want to be right that certainly something awful will happen, so there's no use in trying to do anything good with your life, you could just give up now? Like, do you want to be right that it's just going to be shit? Or would you rather be happy? Would you rather leave some room for the uncertainty, for the possibility that maybe you could have hope and also be right about what happens in your life possibly being good? You also might be wrong. And so we have to be vulnerable when we hope and when we have optimism about the future, because there's that sense of, well, what if I'm wrong though? But it doesn't really matter. This is a form of self-care for me to hope, for me to decide not to give up on my life altogether. I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations, and I really hope that somebody sees this who is going through a hard time or is having trouble being optimistic or hopeful about the future, having trouble being motivated maybe to do anything about the hard things, and maybe even having trouble just even thinking about it because it gives you anxiety or stress. Let's take a breath together. Let's be here with it together. And I have belief in myself that I can handle hard things when they come up. And I'm going to extend that hope to you as well, that you can also believe that about yourself and give yourself that gift and that grace that, yeah, maybe you'd be wrong. Who knows? But the more you believe in yourself that you can handle things, the more likely you are to be right about that. So I have been through a lot of difficult things, and that's why I really feel this calling to share, because it hasn't been easy, and yet I have survived. And I know that someone else can do the same thing. And so I'm saying that not as someone who's had a perfect, amazing life telling you to be positive, but as someone who has really faced darkness and I'm someone who's really faced the darker parts of life, of losing someone you love, of being alone, of being through abusive situations, and still carry on in a way that I think a lot of people have not found the capacity to. So that's why I want to share. I also have been really fascinated with this idea of feeling doomed for many years. It's one of the things that brought me to study in my master's. I got a master's in spiritual and pastoral care. And I'm not religious, but I just wanted to be part of a program that was specifically about helping people to learn ways to sit with uncertainty, to sit with pain, to sit with the fact that bad things do happen, and yet still have this hope or understanding that there's also good in the world. You know, how do we hold both and, rather than just tuning out the bad things and entering into like a toxic positivity that denies anything bad could happen. I don't think that is the solution. In fact, I've seen it go very bad for people, because when you completely check out, rather than just give yourself self-care and try to build yourself up, try to build your fire up, if you go about the route of just tuning out things you don't like, rather than trying to build yourself up to have the capacity to hold it, then you can go down a pathway of numbing or starting to use substances or other things in an addictive way to tune out the difficulties of life. And a lot of people have done that. A lot of people in my circle of loved ones have done that. And I even find myself reaching for my phone and scrolling through social media or the news as a coping mechanism. And I'm trying to find a balance with that. Because again, I don't think the solution is necessarily for me to check out of everything, but to try to find a medium is more my style. And I have periods where I don't look at the news or I don't look at social media, and I take like a big long break and change the way that I do it. And those decisions are yours, but it's not enough to just tune out of bad things, is what I'm trying to say. And that in itself is not sufficient, and that in itself is not healthy, because there's more that you're gonna have to tune out, because bad things do happen, and those could be in your life too, and not something you can turn off with your phone. Okay, so that's why if you don't build the ability to deal with stuff, then life is gonna like take you over, and you're gonna be turned off rather than turn on. In the background I have some Christmas lights. I have a Christmas tree, and the lights are turned on. But I think if you've been through hard things, you might know what it feels like when your light is turned off and you just don't have that spark, you don't have that desire to keep going, you don't have what it takes. And so that's when you know you need some rest, you need to maybe retreat. But you also need to invest in your ability to turn back on no matter what is around you. And the darker it is, the brighter the light shines. So although I bring up the topic of news and social media, which are things outside of you, the truth is this is entirely related to your relationship to yourself and your inner world. It is global, but it also is individual. And they're both kind of connected. But what I want you to know about the big picture is that we all have our own puzzle piece of it. Nobody has to do the one same thing. There's a big tapestry that we're all a part of, and we all have a little piece of it. And so I consider myself an artist, mostly writing, but other things too. And I think many people can be artists that don't even identify as that. But the point is that I think that art can change the world. So that's one way to do it. Sometimes my art for me looks different day to day though, because sometimes the thing I'm really called to create is finishing my taxes. So there's so many ways to create change in your life, to do something meaningful, to do something purposeful, something that matters, even if it's not something that's important to somebody else. But we all have our own way of doing it, and that's something that brings me to feeling like my light is turned on. Our lives are really important, the details of our lives, not letting things go on for years and years when you know you really need to tackle them. That can be extremely meaningful. And that's the kind of thing where it's so easy to tune out, maybe put on a TV show and never actually do that thing you've been meaning to do that would make you really happy, that would make you really fulfilled and satisfied, and also relieve some of your stress and your tension over this thing that you still haven't gotten done. So what is a toxic positive mindset, and why am I saying we shouldn't go there? So toxic positivity is something like telling yourself everything is going to be fine while completely pushing away any possibility of the opposite. And this could be in situations where there really is a very big risk. I'm thinking, for example, of something that happened growing up where someone in my family went bankrupt because they were not able to acknowledge the financial risks they were putting themselves and others in my family through. So if you want to go bankrupt, you could just completely ignore the possibility that anything could go wrong with any investment that you make, even when people are telling you this is risky. I wouldn't recommend that. There are risks to everything. You're going to need to make hard decisions, but you should do those decisions with eyes wide open And that's why toxic positivity is not something that I really like. And yet, I do appreciate optimism, which can be much more practical and much more radical, because it's about seeing all of the bad stuff and also having the courage to keep your light on anyway. So if you are engaged in toxic positivity, you might also feel like you don't really need to do anything about your problems because they're just going to magically be solved for you. I don't recommend that either. I think that there could be ways that other people are going to help you, and some things might not need to be dealt with right now, but it's another extreme to feel that way about everything and to not take responsibility for your life or the things that need to be tackled. So it's a balance. Life is more complicated and nuanced than just going with one thing. I'm always like, life is nuanced. You've got multiple things to look at and balance. And that's like kind of the Sofia Wren way. So if you've been following my content, this might kind of sound familiar, that life is complicated and not black and white. It's all the colors. So the answer isn't as easy as saying like, no, don't ever be positive, and no, don't ever be negative. We have to be kind of in the middle and have some of both. That would be healthy. And what's also healthy is doing stuff like resting and recovering and consolidating your energy and taking time to rest when you need to, especially if you need to kind of decide your next step and not just throw your energy out into any old thing. You want to be really intentional and wise about where you put your time and energy. I think that's really smart. I think that you can do all of that and not be in toxic positivity and not be depressed. And you can still be sort of seeming like you're not doing anything on the outside. And yet the reason why this is different than just sitting around doing nothing is that you are preparing yourself. You're preparing yourself to get back out there and tackle problems. You're preparing yourself to control the things that you can control, to do stuff about the things you can do stuff with, and get back to work on Monday on your projects or whatever that looks like for you. But the point is that I really want you to think about, what are the things that can turn my light on that aren't necessarily going to be things that I wait for, wait on something external to do for me. Like, for example, I've had moments where it felt like I couldn't be optimistic or happy until XYZ thing was done. Like, this job I hated was over, for instance. I had a job I really hated and it was making my life miserable, and I decided to put on my phone this little countdown. It was like a retirement countdown of like when the job was going to be over. But when I looked at the numbers, I had 100 days left, or over 100 days. And I just made me realize, that's just too long a chunk of my life. 100 whole days, that's like 3 months. That's just too long to be miserable, to be abject, totally miserable. I just could not do that to myself, to just give up 100 days to being miserable. And I decided that even though I hated the situation I was in and I couldn't speed up the end of it, that I just try to find other ways to be happy in the same place that I was. To really think about, what are the things I can control? What are the things that would make me happy, bring me joy, bring me strength, and give me a positive experience? I'm gonna focus on bringing those into my life. Okay, so when I'm talking about being fired up and finding those things that turn your light on, I'm talking about giving you this extra sparkle in your life, being motivated, being joyful, and being alive. And these are things that I think we all can find somehow. But the question is, like, have you really been seeking them? Have you really been feeling like it's important to turn your light on? Or have you only been focusing on turning other things off? We have to find the courage and the strength to face things that are difficult in our life, because difficult things are always going to happen. And if you don't try to turn yourself on, you could remain perpetually turned off, depressed, overwhelmed, unable to face any of it, and just wanting to hide under your covers. I know, because I was in that place for a long time. The last few years have been really difficult since my dad died, and it has been especially difficult for me to find that light again. But it is something that I have found, and I am proud of that, and I share again to try to inspire other people who are seeking that experience as well. I don't find everything in life and the world enjoyable to experience right now. There's certainly bad things that I see on the horizon or that I see going on, and some things are not in my control, and those are the hardest. for me. But I also know that I can deal with it. I think that we can choose to witness the things that we don't like and be real with ourselves on our own terms, from a place of strength, from a place of self-compassion, and knowing that no matter what, we're gonna figure something out for ourselves, but we are strong enough to hold the information of problems being real. So here's a couple ideas for you if you're looking for ways to turn your light on, to get fired up, and to be able to deal with all of the hard things from a more empowered place. Go out of the house and do something spontaneous, even if it is free or low cost. Go to a park, cafe, a library. Just get out and see where you end up. Try putting on some good music and dancing around your house. Pick up a paintbrush, pick up a pen, find an outlet, sing, play an instrument, start sewing, clean your house or do your laundry, mend a tear on your favorite dress. Find an outlet for your creativity, express yourself in some way, and do something that makes you feel purposeful and alive. Use your voice, use your love. You can give that attention to yourself and take care of yourself well. And you also might find some courage and some hope by helping other people, volunteering, going canvassing, join an organization, make some phone calls, help your neighbor, grow your business by helping other people in a deeper way, write your book, fundraise for a nonprofit, get involved locally, and the simple act of sharing your thoughts or your stories or your hope to somebody else can make a big difference too. There's so many things that are valuable, and like I said, we each have our own piece of the puzzle, so don't feel like you have to do everything, but it's about finding what is going to work for you. And I like to think of the future generations to come and some way that I can be a part of a movement to help them, just as the people who came before me have made it easier for me to exist as well. I'm not saying any of that is perfect, but it's doing what you can. So use your imagination. What do you need to do to be lit up this season? What do you need to believe to keep your light on during hard times? Just like that moment when I realized, hey, 100 days of a bad job, it's long, but it's long enough that I just can't allow myself to be miserable. I'm gonna do everything I can to try to find joy, even though I don't like my current situation. That was a shift that I made. What kind of shift do you need to make? Even in my life when I had very little time, I could find a little 15-20 minute segment to do some writing, and often that would really help me, whether it was early in the morning or during lunch. Remember, it's not difficult things that make you stronger or tougher. What makes you resilient is learning the kind of process that you need to turn your light back on after something bad happens. And if you've forgotten how to feel joyful or how to find hope and optimism, I do have a belief that you can find it again and that you can handle all the things that life will bring. I also have created a system with all the things that have helped me to figure these things out for myself. It's an optimism program to help you walk through the process. It can help you to find the things that help you feel more positive in your everyday life, while also being better able to deal with the hard things. I've learned so much by doing this process since August 2024, and now that it's 4 months later, I feel a big difference in how optimistic I am, even when hard things or things I don't like are going on. It really has helped me get out of a 3-year funk that began when my dad died in August 2021. And the point is that the fact that my dad passed away, for instance, hasn't changed. There are many things that I'm not thrilled or happy about right now, and I can be real about that while also being optimistic about my capacity to deal with things. And that's what it means to be fired up. I feel like I can turn my light on more consistently now. I feel a little bit more in control of my life. I'm getting more things done that make me feel satisfied with my life. I know I can rely on myself, and I found people and things to help me. I just want that for more people, so I made a program to share. You can find information about that Optimism program on my website or in the link below. But I want to come back to the main points. Remember, the answer is not simply to tune out or turn off the things that bother you. There are extremes to turning things off that can be very unhealthy. So if you want to be able to be resilient enough to tackle those things that are difficult in your life rather than turning them off or running away, I really recommend investing in learning how to get yourself fired up. Pay attention to what brings you joy. You can deal with difficult things in a more nuanced and resilient way. We do need to rest periodically, and I totally support that. But what I don't hear people talk about as much as getting rest these days is being on fire. And there is a place for learning how to be on fire and get fired up. The process for you to turn that light back on is going to be different than it would be for anybody else. And at the end of the day, you're the one that holds the key to do that. There's going to be stuff that happens. There always is. But you can be ready for it. You can learn how to get fired up no matter what happens. And once you work that muscle and build that strength, you will be more resilient through all of life's challenges. So first, to do that, you have to know that it's important to know how to light your own fire, and that it's even a valuable thing to have in the first place. You have to have a drive, a fight, a courage, a hope, that little bit of toughness. And I know you can come out of whatever funk or situation you are in if you believe it's possible, because it's about what goes on up here and in here. It's not just about what is going on out there. You can turn your situation around even just a little bit. That little bit is worth it, and I'm fighting for that little bit for you. Don't give up. Get fired up and work on that like it's your job. I will continue to share stories of my life and things that have helped me in the hopes that it helps somebody else. And I dearly hope that you have a fired up day and find a way to turn your light on as soon as possible. From my heart to yours, from Sofia Wren.